air. Now as I come back up, I'm going to pull with the heels. Okay, today I'm going to cover the skin the cat. I'm going to show the easier options for the person just learning, and then I'm going to progress it right through to the straight body 360 pull, which is obviously a much harder progression towards it. Now this is something that you could work on for the next 2 to 3 years and still have work to do on it. So it's a great movement, and we'll class this as a straight arm scapular strength movement. It's a combination of push and pulling. There are some slightly easier options where you can bend the arm in the movement as well, but I'm going to show progressions to make things easier and harder as we go. I am going to start with the easier options to start with, which will be a great warm-up if you're going to do the harder ones. So ideally jump in and follow along with this one. Let's just get upside down first. So ideally when you go upside down on this, you would just be able to kick up into this position. Now if you can't do that, because some people struggle with that a little bit, is to go this way around first, because if this is starting to happen, so you can't actually get your hips up high enough, just start here, have your palms facing down, walk through the rings, turn the rings over, so now the palms are facing up. As I walk in, I'm trying to take my head and shoulders down underneath the rings as the hip comes higher, and at this point I should be able to step or jump upside down. Now I want to be able to exit from this position. You could exit with one leg back out that way. Now that's also a great way of showing you the way to get back up again, and I could exit back through this way. You could do the same with 2 legs at the same time. When you do both legs at the same time, you are going to come down a bit heavier, so just watch that. Then we want to practice a couple of home positions. So let's just go into a candle position first. So basically upside down, legs squeezed together. So I'm looking at my toes and trying to have my legs in line with the straps. Try not to hinge at the hip when you do that. Try and keep the hip fully open. And now the same thing in a tuck. So knees towards the chest, my toes are still in line with the straps. And now I can go between those 2 positions. So tuck, straight, tuck, straight. Notice the feet and the legs are moving up and down in line with the straps. Okay, next movement. So rest if you need to in between them. Obviously come back down is the pike. So now I'm trying to get my torso and my legs parallel with the floor. And then I'm going to open through the hip, back to that straight position, legs in line with the straps, back down to that pike position again, and back out. Now obviously both of those has a flexibility component to it, so you're not going to be able to go outside your flexibility range. So if your hamstrings are tight, you are going to struggle with that pike position. If your hips are tight, you might struggle a bit with the tuck position. So use it as a bit of an assessment, go away from the movement and include some stretches in your practice to make those a little bit easier. Now we can break the whole skin the cat down and just focus on the end positions first. So the easy one to think about is just the hanging position, so the start and the finish, if you like, of the skin the cat if we're going to do a full movement. So just hanging. Now I've got the rings down lower at the moment, so I'm going to have to hang in a tuck position. So if you're not hanging, you should be. It's a great mobility exercise for the whole body and a great scapular conditioning movement. So I'd add hanging to your daily routine if you're not doing it already. And the other end of the skin the cat is the German hang. So we can get into this in 2 ways. I could go this way into it, come down into that position. I could jump over into it. So I have that jump, I can go upside down, toes towards the floor, now into the German hang. Now ideally in this position we should be able to lift the feet off, but if you're new to it you might want to have toe assist. And I would hold these positions. This one I'd be aiming to hold for about 30 seconds with the toes off the floor eventually, but use light toe assist if you need to. And then the hang-in position I would try and hold for 30 to 60 seconds minimum. Now we can start to play with the full movement itself. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this. The first one, I'm just going to use a limited range of motion. Now if you are going to use the limited range of motion like the TikTok type movement, then I would recommend that you also train in something for the full range of motion that we'll do in a second, plus those end positions, so the German hang and the hang. So when we're first learning this TikTok position, so basically we're going to try and go down as far as we can on both sides. Just stay in the tuck position to start with, and then we'll do the same in the pike. So I go into my straight position upside down, I go into my tight tuck. So this should be quite easy now because the hips are directly above my shoulders and in line with the rings. Now as I go this way it gets slightly harder. So notice that I'm keeping my heels above my butt, my knees at my chest, and then I go the opposite direction. So we're starting to explore how far can I go one way, how far can I go the other way. And I start to make that bigger and bigger. I'm keeping the arms straight as much as I can. Now I'm just going to repeat that same process, but be in a pike position. So that other position we practiced. So straight body, in line with the rings, in line with the straps. Come down into your pike, try and get parallel with the floor. Now I'm going to go one way, which is slightly easier, and then I'm going to go the other way, which is slightly harder. So just explore how far can you go through this range. So that's a tick-tock movement. So now we're going to have a go in the full movement. Now the full movement ideally would be from a hanging position. I'm going to go all the way upside down, go all the way to the German hang and then back again. Most people will struggle with this to start with, to have full range of motion. So first just test it, go into your tuck position under the rings, and then with straight arms, try and pull yourself upside down, go all the way over to your German hang, and then pull yourself back out. Ideally straight arms the whole time, come back down again. Now the eccentric of the movement is much easier than the concentric, so most people are going to struggle to pull up to start with straight arms. So one option is just to work the eccentric and to use toe assist as needed. So if I'm in that hanging position, I could use bent arms now, so I could pull up, go to straight arms as I pull the hips over, come down towards the German hang, toe assist, little hop, come back out. And because the eccentric is easier, I should be able to come out with straight arms. I could use a slight toe assist as I needed to there. But most people will be able to get the eccentric, so the down movement with straight arms. So focus on that. If you don't have the concentric as well with straight arms, do the bent arms, do a little hop over on the way up, but get that real slow eccentric on the way down, and then you'll slowly gain the strength to be able to pull up. Now if we try exactly the same thing in the pike position, try the concentric first. If you can't get up, just do the eccentric, and you will notice that the pike one will be easier in certain positions depending on where your hips and legs are compared to the tuck one. So pike position, pull yourself over, German hang, pull yourself back out. I'm a little bit restricted by the floor. So same deal, bend the arms on the way up if that's too hard and just work on that eccentric. Okay, now to make it harder, we're just going to take the rings up higher. Now as I take the rings up higher, instead of being limited by my range at the bottom because of the floor, I'm now going to be limited by the anchor point. So this isn't that high, and most people will be training somewhere where they don't have massive height clearance. If you do, you can not worry about it and your legs can just go through. In this circumstance, I'm going to have to go into a tuck or a pike as I come through, not to hit my toes on the top there. Now something you definitely should have is the ability to roll these rings up correctly, so just roll them up. Leave a little bit of clearance and then poke this end through, make a loop and then tuck it back through there and then pull it tight. Now with the rings higher, just try exactly the same thing. So hang in position, try and bring your knees up. Now when you come down to your German hang, you might not be able to touch the floor. And then I can come back through the tuck again, straight arms, come back out. Same thing in the pike. Remember, bend the arms on the way up if you need to, or do a jump, so you could jump your way into it. But when you come back out, make sure the arms stay straight. Now that should keep most of you busy for some time trying to work up to that and be able to do it with control, with straight arms, 2 to 3 repetitions. Now when that starts to become easy, we need to start making it harder in some way. So all we're going to do is increase the lever arm, exactly the same as we do in the planche and the front lever. I'm just going to increase the distance from my knees to my chest. So I'm going to keep my heels at my butt. So I'm going to go into a tuck position. So if I do it in like the front lever so you can see what I mean. So here, easiest position. As I take the knees away from the chest, it gets harder and harder and harder. It gets easier if I take my knees to my chest. Now what you'll find, what most people do with this when they first try it, is for the easier parts of the movement, they'll have their knees away from the chest, and then the harder parts, they will unknowingly bring their knees back towards their chest. So just be aware of that. Video yourself from the side and watch for that to happen. So you put yourself, first of all, into one of the hardest positions, to the hanging position. So instead of having knees at chest, I'm going to open up and now try and stay opened up as I go over. Now this is a bit where a lot of people will cheat a little bit. So try and keep that knees away from the chest. So you can see that it's getting hard for me to talk doing that because it is much harder to have that distance, that knees away from the chest. Now I'm not going to go crazy with the 360 pulls, opening my full body up on this one today. I did train it yesterday, I'll put that video up now. And you'll see the harder bits is where my hips want to pike, so I want to close that hip slightly. So ideally just try and open that as much as you can. One of the things you can work on if you're starting to get into the harder variations, especially when you come back out of the German hang, is think you're pulling with your heels or your toes to get back out of the movement. So I'll show you again on this one. So I'll go into that advanced tuck position, so more of like a flat back tuck. So here, pull through, keep the distance, knees away, all the way down. Here, now as I come back up, I'm going to pull with the heels. Instead of pulling with the hips. So a lot of people will do this. So they get to this position and then they pull with the hips. See, the knees are going back towards the chest. So we want to try and pull like that so the heels are leading the way. Now you can do exactly the same variations on the bar. You're just restricted because normally you'll have a bar that goes all the way across. So you have to get through between your torso and the bar with your legs. And the other difference is the bar is fixed, so it holds you in that position all the time. One of the benefits of the rings is we're moving and changing the rotation of the ring as we do the movement, so it makes it easier on the bicep. A gymnast will have their hands in a specific way to condition the bicep and actually make it much, much harder. I wouldn't recommend you do that unless you're specifically working towards some harder gymnastic type movements. I personally just let the hands and the rotation go where it needs to go to make the movement as efficient as possible. Now when you start to go beyond the tuck and we start to go towards a straddle position, you'll have a bit of an issue with the rings because when you go into straddle, your legs are going out to the side. So if I pull up in a straddle position, you'll see I hit the rings. So I just have to bring them into straighter legs as I go through that easier section at the top. Or if you've got something like this, you'd have to bend the knees as well. So I can pull up through my straddle. So again, I'm limited by the floor to start with. And then I hit the post. So I have to bend the knees, go back to my straddle, pull with the heels. The post is in the way, legs are in the way, come in, come through the easier section, back to your straddle, come back out. So obviously you've got to play around with that a little bit, but if you're working at that level, you already know how to play around with different positions. Now, once you've got a skin the cat that's usable, you can add that to your ring routine. So if you have a muscle up, you could go muscle up. Here's one I done yesterday. I done muscle up, forward roll, skin the cat. You can even go into things like false grip, skin the cat that would allow you to do a muscle up on the way back out. Now, normal deal, let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. Also, let me know how the sound is on this. I just bought a new thing for my GoPro that should ideally, hopefully, give me a little bit more audio when I'm out using the GoPro instead of my big camera. Thumbs up and subscribe will be appreciated, and I'll speak to you next time. Thanks, guys.